like clock. I can't stop. Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Boruto episode 160. Alright guys, today was definitely a decent episode. The first things first, I do want to point out Boruto was definitely the MVP of episode 160. He did so many good things and so many things that made you scratch your head at first, but then that actually made sense towards the end. But first things first, I do want to get into how it actually started off. It started off with Boruto running over a trap. Now this is something that we haven't really seen in Boruto a lot, and it kind of brought me back to the land of waves. Back in those times, you really had to watch for random traps, and because Boruto, the rest of Team 7 plus Mujino is going into an uncharted area, there's going to be situations just like that where you have to watch for random traps as well. Even though this wasn't necessarily a trap, back in the land of waves, the previous Team 7 walked by a puddle, and Kakashi noted that the puddle wasn't necessarily supposed to be there, mainly because it hadn't rained that week, and of course Kakashi automatically understood and noticed that something was fishy going on. Now even though that wasn't a trap, you pretty much understood that Kakashi understands and takes note of very subtle details, and that right there is something that Boruto did not do, and because of that he almost got caught into a trap. Now one of the things that I was really worried about was going to be, I was worried that they were going to be hunted mainly because they are a part of the Hidden Leaf Village, but it turns out that that wasn't the case, mainly because they took off their headbands. That was definitely a smart decision. Now further into the episode, one of the interesting things that I did hear about is the fact that Mujino noted that other ninjas from other small villages are also in the Land of Silence, basically trying to find out or figure out exactly what's going on with this Hashirama cell. Now of course we don't really know the intent of these other villages and the intent of the other shinobis, but we can absolutely speculate. Wise words from Lil Wayne, he basically said, I don't know what this person is thinking, but I know how people think. In this situation right here specifically, other shinobis and other villages might be trying to use the Hashirama cells for their own gain. These small villages are small villages for a reason, and of course if they could find anything to get the upper hand on the big villages, they would definitely do so. One of the bigger downfalls of Naruto is that he kind of neglected these small villages, and as we see right now with the Kata organization gaining steam and thriving off of these small villages to give them resources and basically shelter themselves, Naruto definitely needs to pay a lot more attention to these smaller villages. Now into the actual mission that Boruto and Team 7 were on. I think at first it was very interesting seeing how Boruto and Sada were super shell-shocked, mainly because they had never really seen anything quite like the Land of Silence. Really, to all of us, it seemed like the throwback to the old school Naruto, not necessarily the Hidden Leaf Village, but if you guys do recall, back when we were seeing flashbacks to the Hidden Rain Village, it definitely shared a lot of similarities. And not only that, the Hidden Rain Village right now is kind of like that as well. Not necessarily to the extent of that, but you guys understand, it's still a very, very undeveloped nation, and of course the Land of Silence basically mimics that exact same thing. For example, one of the first things that Boruto was exposed to was a kid basically stealing to put food on the table to eat, and Boruto was extremely surprised because it was still a kid, but yeah, at that young of an age they still have to do things to eat. I mean, it's not like anybody's just gonna give them any handouts, and that really reminded me of Nagato back in the day, back when he was a very younger kid, and he also had to commit crimes, steal food to also eat as well. Nagato and his friends literally went from door to door begging people for bread, mainly because he was literally passing out from hunger and they just would not give him anything, so of course they would have to steal things to eat. One of the more suspicious things that we did see during that scene is a blimp. Now I'm pretty sure you guys understand, or at least the people who follow the manga understand, the significance of a blimp. The significance of a blimp comes in chapter 16. As of right now in the anime, we're in between chapter 15 and chapter 16. Of course, the Kata actuation arc being a manga only arc, we could possibly assume when we actually do start to cover the manga content in chapter 16, the blimp will definitely come into play. Now one of the best scenes of the episode hands down is when Team 7 pulled up to the actual shop where they tried to get some intel from the shopkeeper. Now of course it seemed like he didn't necessarily want to cooperate with Team 7, but it did give Boruto a very good chance to make his MVP case for this episode. It's like he completely disregarded everything that Mujino was telling Boruto early on in the episode, where he was pretty much saying like, hey, don't be a hero, and he went ahead and tried to be a hero regardless. It definitely worked out in Boruto's favor this time, but hey, maybe the next time it probably will not work out in Boruto's favor, so Boruto has to be extremely careful, and Konohamaru and Mujino has to give Boruto a stern talking to. But regardless, the fight scene itself was decent. It wasn't necessarily a very long scene, it was probably like about 10 to 15 seconds. Boruto made extremely quick work of two buff dudes, and it kind of made me feel bad, man, because me as a buff dude myself, I'm like, hey, what's going on here? One of the things that I really don't like is the inconsistency with Boruto. Boruto in one episode will look absolutely amazing, like he's completely Chunin level, just scratching the surface of low Jonin level, and in the next episode he looks completely useless. For example, when Boruto is being attacked by the person that was basically infused with Hashirama cell, Boruto Boruto seemed like he was completely useless. In this episode, Boruto seemed like he was absolutely amazing. Two buff guys took him down in like 10-15 seconds and got what he needed to get and basically saved the mission right then and there. Now, of course, I have no problem with Boruto being that strong. Some people don't necessarily like it, but if Boruto is going to be that strong, it needs to be consistent. We need to see this type of Boruto every single episode. I'd absolutely love it. Now, the scene after that was completely fan service when we got to see everybody go into the bar. Konohamaru was basically drooling over himself. Konohamaru almost completely lost his home training and forgot where he was. Mujino had to get him back on track, and then we see the actual scientist. But that scene leads to Team 7 getting some valuable intel about the scientist and who he's actually planning to get the Hashirama cells from, or meet with the person who actually has the Hashirama cells. The last scene of the episode was definitely extremely creepy. Now, at first, I ain't gonna lie to you guys, I thought the person was gonna be a very strong character, possibly get into a little scuffle with Team 7. I thought it was going to be a very cool scene, but lo and behold, we see an old man that potentially got into a fist fight with his barber before meeting up with Team 7 and the guy. Now, supposedly this guy's the butler, and I'm not going to lie, whoever the actual person that he's working for is, that guy's extremely smart, mainly because he understood that there was a very good chance that the scientist wasn't really the scientist. That young man is playing some 3D chess, and he actually called it. Konohamaru is actually masquerading as the scientist. Now, Team 7 is going to be in a very peculiar situation. This guy right here is basically dying from the Hashirama cells, and if Konohamaru doesn't help him like as soon as possible, we have been had. We have been found out. The whole mission is possibly going to be a failure. And one of the things that I like about this arc is the fact that the Boruto writers have already shown us that they are not necessarily afraid to have Team 7 lose a mission. The previous mission that Boruto and the rest of Team 7 were on, they lost that mission, including Mujino. They pretty much lost it. So in this particular situation, it would not be a surprise to anybody if they also lost this mission as well. If Boruto just takes 2 back-to-back L's. And of course, that would hurt his ego, but more importantly, it could possibly be extremely detrimental for the Hidden Leaf Village in the future. Now, at this particular point, I think one of the best things that Konohamaru can possibly do is take the butler back to that weird female scientist who currently has Mitsuki. At this particular point, she's basically trying to figure out a way to cure that Hashirama cell because she's basically using Mitsuki's body to create a cure. If Konohamaru is in fact successful in that mission, then we might have a situation where Konohamaru and the rest of Team 7 can possibly meet the person who's actually behind or actually has the Hashirama cells. I think that right there would probably be the best course of action, but of course, it's going to be very tricky, man, because if the person is actually there with them and he wants them to actually cure the guy on the spot, that will basically mean the whole mission is bungled. The whole mission has failed. But of course, if that's the situation, the actual god pops out, we wouldn't care, man, because we just captured a god that has the Hashirama cell. So either regardless, I feel like right now we're in a very critical point in the mission. It could either go very good or it could either go very bad. But regardless, I think that this episode is definitely a very good one. It definitely captivated a lot of us. And of course, it wasn't necessarily the best, but of course, it was decent. But I do know what you guys think about this episode in the comment section below. And give me your best part about this episode. In my opinion, I think the best part of this episode for me was when we first seen the old man with a petty barber. But regardless, let me know what you guys think. It's been your boy, Baara B. And we out.
It's a knife.